I found a place. It's not about that life at all.
But my first thought immediately was like,
free chairs.
inventory! And he didn't see it that way, unfortunately.
No almond water here.
No almond water.
We're eating the entities.
The complaint online was like, it didn't make any sense. None of this movie makes sense. I think y'all don't care about women.
Hello, you're coming to the Backrooms with me. Welcome back to Reese's Side Quests. Today I've brought on special guest Brinly Schreijer to talk about the Backrooms movie and the broader theory of the Backrooms. So to get started, we're going to talk about a little bit of context of the world building around the Backrooms and the community that sprung up around it. So the origin of liminal spaces and the Backrooms as a concept goes back several years. It's dependent on the idea that there is a very surreal and uncanny nature to the repetitiveness of 20th century construction especially. Even looking down a long empty hallway at a hotel can give you this kind of feeling.
That was pretty much our entire trip to Vegas. We just kept saying, like, it's literally the back rooms in here, like,
yeah.
Because there's, like, nobody there at the hotels. Like, we were there during, like, what, like, spring break? And it still felt very empty, and, like, it smelled of mildew and alcohol. And then the casino's super late at night. Like, that uncanny feeling of, like, this is supposed to be a space that's so filled with people. You're like, it has people intentionally in mind with the design of everything. And realizing just kind of how strange the spaces we inhabit every day are. Or, like, not every day. Like, Vegas is somewhere you go, like, on occasion, hopefully.
But also the spaces you inhabit every day, like,
yeah.
you know, offices, things like that, where there's just this very repetitive nature that's kind of creepy almost, because you just don't see that in the natural world. Like, and when there's no people in them and there's not necessarily anything exciting happening or changing from moment to moment, your mind can't be distracted from that inherent eeriness, that uncanny feeling.
Like, it's not as, like, I think it's a distinct difference between what liminal space, like photography and horror, is about. It is like modern 20th century buildings, because if you watch videos of, like, if, like, you were to walk through the Sistine Chapel, you know, alone, there was no one in there, it would be a completely different feeling. So it's not about the inherent emptiness of something. It's about the combination of it with, like, 20th century architecture. And even, like, yeah, like, if you walk through, like, an old decaying building from, like, the 1800s, that has a completely different feeling. Even if it's empty, you're, like, it gives you a different feeling of, like, ooh, spooky ghost. Whereas, like, you don't get that. You know, you're not worried about ghosts necessarily in, like, an office building. So it's just a different type of feeling of creepiness when you're walking through something like that and there's no one there.
Right, you're not really sure what you're supposed to be worried about, because we don't have any mythology about these spaces until now. So, you know, so I think that's what's most fascinating about the Backrooms, is it tries to add a legend and a lore to these spaces that we have such a visceral, like, human reaction to. So the origins of the Backrooms specifically out of the liminal space category on the internet originates from a specific post on 4chan, and this was a post of a real place. I will put it up on the screen, and it
and they still have it set up like this. We could go there. Right?
Really?
Yeah, we should go there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Idea.
Okay, that's pretty cool, because I saw that they found somebody tracked down this post to what it originally was, and it was in the middle of a renovation process, so I imagined that it might have been changed. But
I've seen YouTubers, like, still go there, and other, like, famous liminal space, like, imagery, like,
yeah,
a lot of them.
I've seen people go to the one that's like a hospital, or I don't know, but it has that interior courtyard.
Yeah,
that's a famous one. So, you know, this brought together the video game idea of no clipping with the idea of liminal spaces, and the idea that you can pass from the real world into some kind of dimension of liminal spaces.
And like, in video games, sometimes if, like, you glitch, the rendering around it looks distorted and weird because it's the video game, but, like, you're not playing it as the video game is intended to be played.
Right. Like, for example, it happened a lot, or people would enter cheat codes, so it would happen in the dungeon-based game Doom, and there were certain areas that you could only access through no clipping that were like weird areas of the map, essentially. And so it kind of had that lore to it on the internet well before the Backrooms. This is like the early 1990s. So then out of that spawned several follow-up additional posts and writings, very elaborate writings on, different levels of the Backrooms, and the idea that you can essentially descend through the Backrooms almost like the levels of hell and reach these different types of liminal spaces. Like, some of them are more oriented like office buildings, some of them are pools, some of them are like suburban neighborhoods, things like that, where it's just different instances of repeating structures, liminal spaces that we see in the real world that people have written into the universe here. And so the abundance of writings that are presented in this wiki and online greatly popularized the idea of the Backrooms and the ability of people to essentially insert their own interpretations of it into this broader spectrum of lore. And so that brings us into the YouTube series made by Kane Pixels. That's his YouTube handle, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. And his real name is Kane Parsons. And in 2022, he released a YouTube series titled just The Backrooms, right?
Yeah, it started off as one YouTube video that he started doing. Originally, he was doing like these Attack on Titan videos, and he kind of just got bored with it. He felt like he'd kind of run through doing those videos, and they were doing pretty well. And then he made a Backrooms video, and I believe that was in like 2021, like coming right out of COVID.
Yeah, I think my thing says it was just at the turn of the year, like January 2022, right during the pandemic. Yeah.
But yeah, before we get into Kane Parsons' series, I think it's important to like distinguish that his series is his own take on the Backrooms concept that started off as just like an online creepypasta compared to the WikiHow, or not WikiHow, just WikiHow to get to the Backrooms. We're going
through the wall.
So the Wikipedia Backrooms basically is just like, since anyone can like really edit Wikipedia, people just constantly adding like different sublevels, and they get really extreme and really crazy, and they all have like kind of like this like classification types of like how dangerous they are, the entity threat level, just like does the space itself try to kill you, and it can range between like, endless hallways like level 0. There's also different organizations that exist within it, like there's Meg, and they are like an operation that help, like, called Wanderers, which is like if you're someone lost in the Backrooms in the wiki version, like Wanderers are just like if you get stuck in the Backrooms, they help Wanderers survive the Backrooms. But like levels can be so crazy. Like there's a really famous one called like Kitty's house, and it's this entity called Kitty, and you're stuck in his house, and like really like it can be very specific. Mm-hmm. And like there's like the birthday party Backrooms where it like looks like you're stuck in like a kid's birthday party, and then there's like there's other ones where it's just like you are outside and there's like fields of like, farmland, and you're walking through the farmland, and there's these weird entities with like water hose noses that like do, but it's like infinite, and people infinitely create it. And I saw a lot because I'm very engrossed in the online spaces for the Backrooms. I'm definitely like in some Discords and stuff like that I'm not a super active participant in, but I am there. I'm lurking. And I definitely think the viewing of this movie was impacted by the reaction from the community that's more focused on that Backrooms lore. They definitely have had some negative reactions to Kane Parsons' work, which I think Kane Parsons' work is very intelligent and thorough and extremely thought out, and a lot of science backed, and trying to add questions of if you could apply science to this concept, which I think is really fun and really brilliant. And if you're going to have a good movie, I think you need something like that. But there was a huge part of the internet who likes the wiki Backrooms who was very, very angry about this film.
I saw the same thing,
I found so nauseating. I'm like, I'm so sorry you all have poor media literacy.
They're like, where's the almond water?
No, literally, and almond water is like the only water you can drink in this version of the Backrooms, and it's really cool because it's a completely fan-made project, and I like that everyone can kind of dip their hand in it, and it's a modern kind of like oral traditional storytelling in a way of like mythos of like taking your own, because Backrooms is so much about like your own memories, I think, rooted in like nostalgia and childhood, and like, you know, how the 80s and the 90s that urban decay of the 80s and 90s was really present in the early 2000s when we were kids growing up. So it's a lot of people who are diving into like deep memories in the back crevices of their brain and then turning that into a Backrooms level, which is so fun and so cool. But if you think Kane Parsons is somehow going to magically translate what's going on in your own head and put it in the movie screen when everyone else has a different level they created, I'm sorry, you're just not very smart. And that really irritates me. And that has definitely, I think, taken away a bit from the conversation online about actually why this movie, I thought the movie was fantastic. And I love the idea of how can we apply science to this concept. And I think that's what Kane Parsons has tried to accomplish, of the application of science to a conception. And I think that's where, for me, the movie has brilliance.
I definitely agree with that statement, and I think honestly the YouTube series, which we're about to just briefly get into as well, distinguishes itself from the wiki lore in many regards. Basically, all of those kind of complaints and differences that we just mentioned, I personally think the film was consistent with the YouTube series in terms of the established lore within that series. So I don't think there's really fair complaints there necessarily. It's more the distinction between the lore on the wiki, the fan-made created Backrooms levels, and the universe created by Kane Parsons specifically. And so that brings us to the YouTube series, and this was released. Was it released weekly or kind of a bi-weekly release?
No, very sporadically. It had a very sporadic release because he didn't even really have intentions of this video. It was just something new he was trying, and then it really blew up. And I remember when that video first really blew up, and I was trying to think what point in life I was in, but it was, coming out of COVID, and it was definitely one of those things. It's one of those videos, it was so enjoyable because you watch it on your phone late at night when, like, everyone else is asleep, and you're like, what did I just watch? That was so scary. And, for me, whenever a new video comes out, I always save it to watch before bed, because maybe I don't like myself very much, and I enjoy being scared. But the release was very sporadic.
Right. It's so there was 22 videos in the series, and they were released between January of 2022 and February of 2025. So that's a pretty broad timeline as well. And
I don't think he's done releasing Backrooms videos on his YouTube channel, as far as I'm aware. I think he's still there. Like A24 is still encouraging that. As far as
really?
I'm aware.
So it's technically ongoing?
I think it's ongoing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really interesting. And also, just to note, like, the videos very widely range in length. Some of them are as short as 30 seconds, and the longest is 45 minutes long. So throughout this YouTube series, a key set of lore and facts about this iteration of the Backrooms is established. The first is that, you know, numerous people and objects unknowingly go through portals into the Backrooms. The very first video in the series is presented as a found footage film, essentially, where someone is filming a film with their friends and they fall into the Backrooms.
The character's name of that one is Kane. I don't necessarily think it's Kane's like self-insert, but he just does have the same name. So that guy's name is Kane.
I feel like it has to be a like the.
I don't know. I don't actually, because I don't. It like is, but it isn't, because Kane has very specifically said he doesn't like self-referential type like things within this type of universe. So I think it's like it's supposed to be like a coincidental thing. That's not a coincidental thing, but anyways, that character's name is Kane.
Great. Yes.
From the first Backrooms video. Okay. But it's not Kane the creator. Okay.
It's not
He's
supposed to be
never
specifically
claimed to have fallen
him.
into the back rooms.
And if he did, he didn't.
And this guy dies in the video.
Right. If he did fall in, he didn't last very long to make more YouTube videos because this guy.
The video's like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like he lasted about 15 minutes in the back rooms.
He walks through the rooms. He gets confused. He sees this liminal space, and he's just like, you know, he can't get back out through where he entered, or he can't figure out.
He falls through. Which is a very common thing that happens in the back rooms. Is actually that null points are in the ground. We see that a lot.
Okay.
And
so you can't go back through the ceilings. You can't like jump up there, really. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's kind of scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's stuck in there, and then he runs around, encounters a creature.
Which at the time we were calling, because of some of the videos that are released after, of scientists looking over, you know, the async scientists, some of the following videos, and I'm going to go into the following videos to loop back. Async, which is the company that is studying the back rooms, some of Kane's earlier videos are of them doing studies over bacteria that is in the back rooms and how it is. I was actually very happy to watch it with you because you're a biologist, so I was like, I don't know any of these words, and then you were able to explain them. Yeah, I'm going to talk
about that in a second here.
But Kane in the video, not Kane Parsons, Kane runs into an entity in the back rooms, and it's like this jumbled kind of wiry creature, which at the time people were calling like the bacteria monster, the bacteria entity. Mm-hmm. So he runs into that, and then go into what they found about the bacteria.
Right. So he falls into this, and you know, throughout the series it kind of is established that there are multiple portals that are kind of scattered around that people accidentally fall into and end up in this space. And they can
open and close kind of at any time, like it's kind of random.
Right. And that this company, Async, which seems to be government affiliated in some way or another, has been attempting to study the backrooms because they have access to a portal that seems to remain open. And so they've been studying it by sending people in and out, retrieving objects, and finding found footage that unfortunate victims have left behind as well. So during one of these excursions, they find a body, and they bring it back to research it and find this unique strain of bacteria, basically. And the way that it's described in the video is as a lactobacillus, which caught my ear because I'd studied biology as that's a milk bacteria. And they were saying, this is a lactobacillus, but it's behaving in a malicious way. It's taking over the body like a parasite. And I found that in a very interesting detail, that it's like, in this environment, this normal bacteria is behaving weird. It just adds another layer of the weirdness to this space and adds more questions than it really answers. But that's the reasoning why the entity or monster is called the bacteria monster, because it's presumed that it's composed of this.
And what I think is, well, something I want to add on, because you were talking about, it's not like portals, they're called null zones technically, when I'm like, well, actually, they're called null zones. So
they're like overlaps in the dimensions, essentially?
Yeah.
Kind of? More like a convergence zone?
Yeah.
Okay. Rather
than like a portal. And null zones, I said open randomly earlier, but it's not really random. So if you watch, I don't know the exact videos, so, you know, but in one of the async videos, what I think is so brilliant about the structure of the async videos is that they're all made as if they're like informational videos that they're handing out to their employees, and you've stumbled upon them.
Yeah, that's a number of the series.
That is just such a brilliant way of framing the videos and makes them that much creepier, because it's not intended to be creepy. Yeah. There's, I would say, a almost like surgical, like, very sanitization, normalization of like what they're talking about, as if it's like something you'd watch in like a science class, which makes it that much more disturbing.
Right.
And so the way that in one of these employee instructional videos, there's references to like sun flares and like dates on when certain things happen are when there was like big solar storms. Mm-hmm. So we know that the null zone's opening is directly connected to solar flares. And again, you're more of the scientist, so
yeah, I mean, so it's like electromagnetic kind of thing, maybe, but that just brings me to wonder why the one that async has is always open, though. If some of them are open and closing,
well, okay, we see that in one of the videos it's not like found footage, but their video of them doing the science experiment and them using the they're trying to make the electromagnetic door. And when they finally get it to successfully work, it was when the big earthquake happened in California. So they're Kane
like
is
inducing it, kind of?
So when they open it with they use the electromagnetic science, whatever. I don't understand science. I'm a writer and an actress and a singer. But, so I understand all the Kane stuff from a directorial point of view, so I appreciate you have the science aspect of it. But I just know that you're using electromagnetic technology to open a null zone, right? Because the first person, and this is again through more of these videos, and Kane's second YouTube channel. He's a second YouTube channel where he posts all his music and the imagery. Between the music and the imagery, we learn that the head scientist leading this experiment is a man named Ivan Beck. Okay? And Kane also says Ivan Beck is both the protagonist and antagonist of the entire series. We've never seen this man's face, which is what's really crazy about this.
He's the head of Async?
He's the head of Async.
So,
or he's
right.
Maybe I think he's the assistant director, so maybe there's some financiers above him, but really he's the brain behind it.
The most interesting thing about not the most interesting thing, but an interesting element of you receiving a lot of this information as the employee videos is this is some insane stuff, and it's implied that this is the lowest level of need to know information. This is what the new employees are getting. So it's just implied that there's so much more that is actually known potentially to these higher ups at Async that you're just not having access to yet as a viewer.
And so we start seeing that right after that earthquake in California happens. I can't remember it was my parents lived through it. But basically showing that Async's work is kind of leaking out into the real world and actually starting to impact people. We see missing posters. People start suddenly going missing. We see that video of the car no clipping through the highway.
I saw that. I didn't realize that it was implying that was caused by their activity. I thought it was just they're just studying the convergences. So
Ivan Beck discovers in the 70s the Backrooms because he discovers the Backrooms, and it's implied that because there's, again, between imagery and music on Kane's second thing, that when Ivan Beck discovers the Backrooms, and he sees it in a flash of green light. Green light is very important in this series. So in the flashes of green light, then he discovers the Backrooms. He presumably, we don't fully know, but we can presume he kind of no-clips into there. And he sees the home he lost as a child. So there is, and again, this was all through Kane's second account, through the music and imagery. He had a home that was swallowed by the sea as a child, and he sees glimpses of it in the Backrooms, and then he gets back to reality. And ever since then, he's trying to get back into the Backrooms so that he can go back home. He kind of goes insane, or it just becomes, maybe not insane, but obsessed with trying to get back to the Backrooms, getting back to his childhood home, which was, when we get into the movie later, I was 100% feeling oh, that's the direction that the movie has to take, so the direction of the movie made a lot of sense to me because I understood that. And also just something to note is that there's always this motif of wind chimes associated with Ivan Beck, which is really interesting because then we also see those multiple times in the movie. So basically, Backrooms is discovered in the 70s, pushing forward in the 80s and 90s. In the 90s is when they open the null zone so that they can start going in and out. And then any time you see in other found footage-esque videos that when people are no-clipping in, it's tied around the same time that there are big solar flares that hit the Earth. So we know that there's something with electromagnetism and the sun that is directly causing people to no-clip into the Backrooms. Just something to know.
Right. They're just, Async is inducing those conditions in their space, basically.
Yeah, to open the null zone. Yeah.
Okay.
And that caused the San Andreas fault line earthquake. I figured it out.
So, after watching the YouTube series, a few major thematic questions still kind of remain. the first obviously still being, what is the Backrooms? We don't really understand what it is, how it formed, was it created, is it sentient, does it, how does it reflect the real world and why? You get to explore it, and yet none of those questions are really answered. And so there's just this kind of nagging mystery that underlies this whole story. As well as the entities, what are they, how do they form, why do they kill people, and how do you actually avoid them if you're in there? I mean, any other major kind of questions that you were left with at the end of this, like thematically, or just world building wise as well?
Yeah, for me, one of my biggest questions is how the complex changes and expands, and what induces the complex to do that. Because you can literally see it in the YouTube series, and Clark, the main character in the movie, references that it changes over time. That, right, it copies itself over and over. Now we have a better understanding, and we'll get into this, that the Backrooms is constantly making copies of things until it's no longer recognizable from the first original thing that it copied. But for me, the question is, how does it... I still don't understand, how does it make the copy? What does it copy everything? Is everything copied? Or does it only copy certain things depending on, the energy it can connect with? And then once it does copy it and continues to make more, disheveled copies of it, incorrect copies of it further and further down the line, what induces a copy? What induces the energy to change and grow and expand? Is the Backrooms expanding? Is it infinite? To me, I would guess it's infinite, but still that's not confirmed. So can you hit, at some point, a void? And then that's where there's a void and it keeps copying from the void. For me, I want to understand how it expands and how it changes, how the copies work.
Yeah.
That's my big question at this point.
Okay.
So, heading into the 2026 Backrooms movie, the movie is set in 1990, and we're following our main character, Clark. Clark is in his, mid-30s-ish, and he owns a furniture store, which I think is a great choice because, right, a lot of people who who enjoy Backrooms as content, we enjoy it because, people growing up in the early 2000s when we were kids, we were seeing the urban decay of the 80s and the 90s during our childhood. And so a store like Clark's store is of the format of a furniture store that we would go into as children, but it would feel like the Backrooms because it was moldy and decayed because it hadn't been updated since the 80s or the 90s by the time, it's 2005 and we're going to the store with our parents.
Right. It has that weird look to it. It's
right.
It's like a furnished room, but it's not really a furnished room. It's just furniture that kind of keeps going in this huge space, And it's liminal.
I think that is such a brilliant choice because even when he's not in the Backrooms, you still feel like you're in the Backrooms, just in a sort of way. And something brilliant that I noticed about the store is you never see a customer enter or exit.
No.
And you never see anyone but Clark and Mary enter or exit the front door, I believe. Maybe the two employees, but they're the only people who enter or exit the store, which I think is really, really good. Other than we also see the electrician, but we don't see them go through the door.
No, you just see him in there, yeah.
And so I thought the setting was great, and then we first get to really see Clark he is with his therapist, Mary, who's the other main character who we'll get into her backstory, but he is reciting basically an argument with her, replaying an argument that he had with his wife. And so having him in therapy is such a good choice because you immediately get to establish so many things with him as a character. We understand that immediately he's an alcoholic, he has some anger issues, he has bigger dreams of becoming an architect, which again is a really brilliant thing for an architect because that makes it a lot more believable that he's able to map out this place, that he would develop such a fascination with this place. So is it a little convenient that he works in a very liminal space and wants to be an architect and all that? Yeah, but it's a movie. I saw people complain about that. That's really convenient. It makes the movie more interesting.
Yeah, what? You want you and your boring life in the movie?
Right. Right. Everyone just wants to self-insert into the Backrooms, and I want to go there too, but I don't want to see me in the movie, okay? I'm here to watch someone else go through the back rooms. And so I think his character, people also didn't like that his character was flawed, and I think that's just a problem with the 21st century movie audience, or audience of anything, because we all want to be moral purists, but where's the fun in that? Where's the fun where the most pure little cherub boy gets put into the back rooms?
And it's a horror movie.
It's a horror movie. And so having Clark kind of be, you can tell off the bat, like, he's not a great guy. Like, immediately in the therapy session, he's, like, calling his wife, like, a fat ass.
Yeah, he has really bad anger issues, and he's very sad because he drove away his wife, but he still is not, he's basically like, my wife left me, but through this role-play conversation he has with his therapist, it becomes super clear he has no recognition that it's his own fault.
Right.
Like, he's not making that connection at all. And so...
he has a huge victim mentality.
Right.
Huge victim mentality.
Right. And another focal point around the therapist is that the movie chooses to give you some flashbacks of her earlier life as well. And you get to see the story that she grew up with a mother with presumably agoraphobia, where she wouldn't leave the house and also wouldn't allow her to leave the house. And so she spent most of her childhood basically in the same room or in the same small house. And then it'll cut to later in her life, presumably kind of recently in her adult life, that her childhood home is getting completely demolished to build a boring gray apartment building, and she's able to save out of the rubble this one little hand imprint from when she was a kid. And I think it does add some complexity to her character and her own... And
people thought that was unnecessary, which I'm just going to say, I think you're sexist and you don't care about women's feelings, because I thought that was super interesting.
I thought it was too.
The combination of, like, ooh, you're someone who, like, whose mother struggled with agoraphobia, so to some extent she might also, just from, like, learned behaviors, to put someone who struggles with agoraphobia in the back rooms, which is, like, a room, a house, but it can go on forever. Super trippy thing to think about her mental state. So if you thought her backstory was boring, I think you don't care about women. You always know I want to bring up that I think y'all don't care about women. Always going to say
my audience is very open and progressive.
Okay, you guys are open and progressive, but you know somebody in your life who's not. And so I'm calling out that person. Because I saw that bitching online a lot, and it really annoyed me.
Right, I saw people complaining about that it kept flashing back to the scene with her looking at the handprint and getting that piece of the rubble and so on. And it's like, I just think that it was hammering in an important theme for the movie. Like, it's just hammering in that, like, our visceral connection with the backrooms as real people watching the movie is tied to, like, these real traumas that have happened to us in these kind of spaces, and that, like, we have complex relationships with them just as she does.
It all ties back into, and I guess, yes, if you just wanted to watch this movie independently, this theme doesn't matter as much to you if you're not invested in, like, the series as a whole. But the whole point of Ivan Beck trying to get back into the backrooms was for him to try to find his childhood home again that was swallowed by the sea. So to have a character kind of like himself represented in that, but doesn't, like, Mary's very stuck in her head and stuck in the past of what happened to her, and she isn't necessarily... I would say Mary is not, like, feeling nostalgic about her home. She is reflecting on it, but she's not feeling, like, nostalgia in the sense of it's not comforting.
No, she's has just, like, complicated feelings still.
She has complicated feelings and is trying to figure out how to release those feelings. So it's like she's almost an inversion of Ivan Beck. Of, like, she is looking for her childhood home in her mind so that she can release it. Whereas Ivan Beck is actively looking for it so he can go back there. There's a distinct difference, and there's an inversion of each other. And as someone who walked into the movie and understood Ivan Beck's backstory, that made her character more compelling. But I understand if you're watching this movie independently, and maybe you hate women, you thought her backstory was a little boring. And one of my favorite details about the movie is kind of how... Because we haven't actually really seen this in the series at any point, but something that I found really interesting is when the electrician comes in, and, right, the lights have been flickering, and, like, so the background is kind of leaking into this world. When they go to look at the breaker box, there is 3 switches that are sideways.
That was weird.
And don't do anything. And so we've never seen in this series So that's a question I have is like, so the back room can alter our reality. That's what that says. The back rooms can alter our physical reality. And what the implications of that are could be enormous. So that opens a whole new can of worms that I really enjoyed. And then, so are we going into the scene of like when he first goes into the back rooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love that entire sequence of events because right, we see that Clark has been living in the store because his wife has kicked him out of the house.
Yeah, he sleeps in the furniture in the furniture store. One
of my favorite parts of the movie, like, or I think the funniest part of the movie is when he's watching the commercial of his like business competitor, and it's the Western theme. I just really enjoyed that because it was just like because it's very clear at the very beginning of the film when he's trying to film his own commercial for the store, and Bobby, his employee, is like, so is it a pirate theme? Is it a medieval theme? Like, I just think we really need to like. What is it? Like, we really need to hone in on it. And the other guy's just a Wild West theme. It's very clear. And I just thought that was really good, like, sharp comedy. I think the comedy usage moments are really good, just to lighten things. So anyways, he's watching it, and then very briefly the backrooms pop up on the TV, which was just so good, because you're like, oh, there it is. What's about to happen?
Yeah.
And then the lights are flickering, right? And he's all pissy, and he's drunk, very drunk. He's literally drinking whiskey. Like, and presumably has, like, drank half a bottle of whiskey out of the thing. Ugh!
This is peak male performance, like it or not.
So, literally has drank, like, half a bottle of whiskey. Lights flicker, flicker, flicker. He goes downstairs, and I love, just, obviously spoilers for the movie. That hasn't
That's implied here.
Implied. But you'll always get to comment. Anyways. So, he goes down there, and I love it, where he's livid, he's in a fit of rage, and the lights are flicker, 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 and he goes and he hits all of the normal breaker switches, and nothing happens. There's a flicker, flicker, flicker. And then, he's just like, he doesn't in a fit of rage, not expecting anything to happen, the 3 new switches that are sideways, he flips those, and then all the lights go off. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, the cinematography in that scene. Ooh, that one sent me chills down my spine. So
it's just like such a powerful scene that's done like so simply. Like it's like
because I didn't expect that to happen, even though like it was obvious that what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
But watching it, I was just like, that's when I knew like the rest of the movie was gonna be so good from that point on. Like that had me so immersed. I was cheesing in the theater.
So basically, after that scenario, he gets his lights, the lights are shut off, and he notices a small, like, hairline crack in the wall where he can just catch a glimpse of light coming through. And that just attracts his attention, and he leans over to touch it, and his hand passes clean through the wall. So that's weird. And then he
tries to lean on the wall and he falls through it.
Yeah, he falls on his face because he's still drunk. And so, and then me
and the boys took a couple
he's in there,
and we're exploring the back rooms.
Yeah, he's in there now, and he is as confused as anyone would be, kind of looking around, but.
And we said both of our first thought was when he was like, obviously there's furniture. The furniture that he sees at the beginning when he enters the back rooms is all furniture that's in the store, which is really interesting. And I was like, we were like, man, he should have taken the furniture and just sold it at a really small discount. He could have saved his business.
No, man, there was nobody in the store.
But bro did not choose. He could have been advertising.
Bro,
like,
the ads were bad too.
The ads were bad too. But if he had been like dollar chairs,
dollar chairs, infinite
infinite
profit.
Man maybe could have saved his business. Could have got his life back on track, but that's the point. That's the point of Clark. Clark's not about that life. That's not what Clark's about.
No, he's not about that life at all.
But my first thought immediately was like,
free chairs,
inventory, and he didn't see it that way. Unfortunately, that probably would have been a pretty boring movie if then he was running like a Ponzi scheme out of the back rooms. But
no,
that's where my business mind went.
So he walks through the first few rooms, and he's confused. He's kind of like, he thinks it's a real place. You know, he's kind of like constraining his mind by that idea and saying, you know, this is a real place that somehow is just here. Like maybe somebody built it and I'm just walking around. But then he keeps walking and he keeps walking. And he sees rooms that are huge and rooms that go down and up and diagonal in ways that just can't be possible in the constraint of his store.
He says at some point it's like an architect went on an acid trip and built this place.
Yeah. So he's, right, as an architect, he's extremely familiar with how you normally would build a place, and so every single detail of this is probably blaringly weird to him, even more than it would be to the average person.
Right, because when you see like weird floating walls and giant chairs, he would understand what it would take to physically build something like that.
Right.
Like, and if something is so disjointed and truly makes no sense, if you were to truly build it, which it's an entirely real built set, which is incredible. I think it was like a 30,000 foot set. Literally incredible. It's so cool. And so to have a 30,000 foot set, and they actually did build all of this, but like, you know, he's coming from the mindset, obviously in the movie, no one built it. The Backrooms built it. But he's thinking a human built it. His fascination makes a lot of sense, which I think it's so clever that he's an architect, because he would understand that, like, the intricacy it would take to build something so nonsensical. Mm-hmm. So, in saying that, I need a documentary of how they built the stacks. That's really cool.
I think there are some YouTube videos of people, like, walking around in the set.
Oh, I want to go there. I want to spend a night in the Backrooms.
And so as Clark progresses through the rooms, he starts to hear a few noises, and the first of which is coming from something that looks quite human-shaped standing in a dark hallway, and we're, as the viewer, are thinking, man, that was quick, that entity's gonna get him right now. But
main character.
Goodbye, main character. I thought the movie was like halfway over. But alas, it is a cardboard cutout that is quite deeply referential to the YouTube series as well. So
yeah, so it's of a caveman, and we had speculated in the community for a long time that the caveman cutout was put there by Async. And so that was then, like, confirmed. We'd also had theories that Async was trying to lure out entities, which, if you see in the 45-minute video, like the last one posted with the character Ravi runs into a much more human-looking entity, which people started calling still life. So now the question is, what is the relationship between the bacteria entities and still life? Like, in what order do they happen? I'll get into that later, but pin that. But basically, we had been suspecting that Async had been trying to specifically use sound to lure the entities, that the entities are attracted to sound. And, like, with the caveman cutout to see if they would attack kind of like a human shape. So when Clark approaches the caveman cutout, the golden record from the Voyager, I believe it's the 1977 mission, the, like, saying hello in every country is looping, which is such a cool detail because it's just, like, we sent that exact sound up into space because, you know, it's so unknown, it's so vast, it's so expansive, it goes on forever. In a way, space is a similar frontier as the Backrooms, and Kane is always drawing a connection between the frontier of space, the frontier of the ocean, the ocean is still such an insane frontier. I think we've only explored, 3% of the ocean. Like, we've explored the moon more than our own ocean. And so the Backrooms is, like, the next frontier, the same as, like, space and the ocean is. And it's joining those. So then to use that golden record audio is just such a fun connection to those. So Clark sees that. He starts venturing in further. And then he starts hearing the spooky noises. And I was cheesing. I was sitting next to, we went with my best friend, and I was sitting next to her, and the whole time I could just see she was like, oh god, I'm over here like, smiling, just having the best time, like, this is awesome. And I think my experience watching that movie was a little odd because every time something violent happened, I was just grinning from pure excitement and joy. But Clark, I need to rewatch the movie because I'm not going to be able to say these exact sequence of events correctly, but basically he's moving through some rooms, and through, like, a crack in the wall, right, he's hearing all of this commotion. He feels like something's chasing him, and then we see the cardboard cutout just get obliterated. So good, because it's like, okay, so there's a threat here. And so Clark knows that there's a threat in there. Clark don't care. But anyways, Clark then, what's so cool is Which makes me want to wonder how the set is actually constructed. Like, I really want to understand, because then he goes through, like, what is so cool, the set is really built, and it makes, these are already incredible Oscar-nominated, like, actors, who you can see, like, because they're on a real set, like, the visceral terror they're able to, like, communicate in their reactions, because, like, they're really, like, running through this space, which I imagine, like, if you're an Oscar-nominated actor, you are a high-credential actor, and you can really sink into a performance, and you're in the physical space. Having a physical space helps you so much as an actor. Like, I hate the green screenification of acting. I can't stand it as an actor myself. So you can just tell that these actors are really immersed in the performance that they're giving. And they're really able to viscerally translate that fear. And anyway, so Clark kind of ends up then going through, like, this, like, door on, like, this slanted plane that has 3 doorknobs, and he tries to open all 3, and the top one, like, lets him through, and then he crawls back and finds himself, like, at a place that he recognizes that's, like, closer to the null zone, and then he runs back through the null zone back to the store. Yeah. And that was a big thing that people are mad about. Like, you can enter in and out of the back rooms. That makes it not scary. I'm so sorry. If you found an infinite maze that shouldn't exist attached to your place of business, and there's a monster in there, because you can exit, it's no longer scary. Congratulations on your balls of steel, if that's your hot take. Like, I'm sorry, that's terrifying. I almost think that's scarier. Because he has to work there. Not only does he work there every day, right, he lives there. Yeah. And that's just, like, attached to his place of business and where he lives. Yeah. That's really scary.
Right, he doesn't know if the things can come out.
Right, can the entity, and that is a good question. Yeah. Can the entity leave the back rooms?
Yeah, we don't know that.
We don't know. That's, like, really freaking scary. And it's in his place of work. Terrifying.
However, for some reason, and I think this has to do with Clark's broader mental state at this point in time, he continues to go in and out of the back rooms, and in his
could have been selling furniture, but he clearly does not have a passion for it, no matter how cheap he can get the furniture for.
Right, and over the next few days, presumably, he kind of maps out the first few rooms. He creates this architectural sketch, or several sketches, presumably, as well. He brings one of them into his therapist and says, "I found this place." I think that the line from the trailer, "I found a place," and then she's like, "This dude's tripping. He's entering psychosis, probably. That's not good." And so she's like, "Well, I hope you start feeling better, and maybe this place will help you. Maybe this place will help you discover yourself more, and you can, like, freely, you know."
He says something really interesting in that therapy session that I think is so good, because I actually just had the experience of, I was trying to get a friend to come see this movie, and she had never heard of the internet series. She knew nothing about it, didn't know about the 4chan posts. I feel like some people kind of have, like, you had kind of an idea about this series and stuff like that before the movie. Like, you'd seen, like, 1 or 2 of the videos, and you'd kind of seen the memes online. This friend had never seen the memes, never seen videos, knew nothing about it. And I was like, "Oh, are you going to go see the Backrooms movie?" And she was like, "What is that?" And so then I was trying to explain to her the concept of the Backrooms, and she was like, "I'm just not really getting it." And so I really enjoyed that that was the day I went to go see the movie. I was trying to explain it to this friend, and I was, like, so frustrated that I couldn't explain it. So then you cut to this scene, and Clark's trying to do the same thing to his therapist, which I really enjoyed. And then he's like, it's like trying to explain what a dog looks like to somebody if they had never seen a dog before, and then asking them to, like, draw a picture of a dog. And I thought that was such a good metaphor. And he says that to the therapist, again, has a big outburst at her, and is like, "Oh, you don't believe me." Well, yeah, dude, you sound crazy. And he doesn't acknowledge how crazy this place is. Right. He's already completely enamored in it. And I think it's good that the only way this really works, and I think for somebody to become as enamored with the Backrooms as Clark does, it does have to be an extremely mentally ill person. Like, I think so much of the Backrooms reeks of mental illness, and I think a lot of people who are really obsessed with it are very mentally ill. Like, you know, that's not the call's coming from inside the house. And when I'm saying that. So I think because the Backrooms is such a place filled with, like, nostalgia inherently, and, like, things from the past. Also, we've seen from the series And now we've seen from this movie that there is some form of, like, I don't want to say time travel in the Backrooms, but time doesn't move in a linear way.
Right,
like,
yeah.
There's posters, like, when Robbie in the 45-minute video is in the Backrooms, he sees a poster from 2022. But he was taking that video, I think, in, like, 1995.
Right,
so,
and he sees, like, T-shirts from the 1970s and things like that. So.
And something I immediately noticed in the first time Clark is exploring the Backrooms, at some point he sees in the Backrooms shoes stuck in the floor. And it's the shoes that his 2 employees consistently are wearing, Kat and Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I noticed that. I was like, that are those shoes. And I was like, and it's the Backrooms. You're like, everyone's probably going to die in here. But that's when I was like, oh, come on, dude. Like, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, gets very mad at the therapist, and then...
So then he kind of wants to prove that they're real. He's bent on getting it on film, but you know, it's the 90s. Not everyone has a video phone. Yeah. So he has to get his employee's boyfriend, who was filming the commercial earlier in the video, to come along with his employee. What are their names? Kat and Bobby. Right. So they come to the store, obviously not really understanding even what he's asking them. I think he comes to their house and is like, hello, you're coming to the Backrooms with me. You know, like this guy, you know. So,
he has no boundaries, clearly.
No. And these employees were definitely not getting paid enough for what's about to happen.
No.
And so they go with him, you know, they do the whole, oh my gosh, my hand's going right through the wall, this is crazy. Every single person has that moment, which is, you know, I guess that would just happen, you know? That's just how it would be.
And of course, Bobby's like, this is sick. And the girlfriend, with her instincts, is like, this is horrible. We should all leave. This is not good. Yeah. And of course, no one listens to her. Clark, very negligent boss. He has seen, there is a scary monster in here who likes to destroy human-shaped things that make noise. Right. Let me take my 2 employees back here. Right. This is really what it's like to work in America.
It's like, what if your Walmart boss was like, you're coming to Jurassic Park with me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really good metaphor for this. Yeah.
So they go in there. They're exploring. They get to a few spaces that Clark has not necessarily been to. And, I mean, I think it's implied that he hasn't been to some of these spaces. And it's because some of them have very deeply slanted hallways and spaces that you essentially, if you went into it, you couldn't really climb back out because it's a slick, like a drywall-like surface. Mm-hmm. And so he was planning on exploring this new area by lowering somebody down into it and then being able to pull them back up. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
So this scene is so beautifully shot. This whole movie is beautifully shot. It very much has Kane's artistic imprint on it completely. He really understands color grading, and he understands just, like, how to make a cinematic shot feel almost, like, weirdly, like, from a third-person perspective, I would say. Like, as if, like, very almost intentionally, like, someone is watching it, I would say. All of his shots feel very much like they're through somebody's eyes. They're not taken almost, like, neutrally, like, you know? They have almost, like, all of his shots, I would say, have a very human perspective from them. And the color grading is very nostalgic. Like, the way the world when we were younger, literally, I feel like used to have a different color grading because as things were being manufactured, we were using a different color grading in manufacturing and interior design-wise. And he really leans into that. And so this entire scene does just, his camera shots are fantastic through this whole thing. And you have Bobby being lowered down into this slanted room filled with clothing. Great detail that, like, Kane Parsons being base as hell. Bobby picks up a shirt that says "End Apartheid." Like,
oh yeah,
super base, just that he tossed that in there. But anyways, Bobby's exploring different piles of clothing. Mm-hmm. And I immediately was like, this is not good. Like, we're cooked and chopped down here. Because we see a lot of the time in the series videos that when there's piles of clothing and then also the mold, it's just like, that is almost like a nest for the entities. Like, we've had that been implied in the past, and this is very much just like reeks of that. And then, of course, immediately a big shadow comes out of the corner and starts to chase Bobby, and they like pull him up.
You kind of lose his POV, and then they're trying to pull him up.
And then the camera switches, like they set it down, and you can see Bobby still has the rope on him, and the rope is still hanging down into the hole. We've seen the shape of the monster. We don't know what the monster is yet. And we see Kat and Clark trying to hold on to the rope and hold on to Bobby as like this like tilted hole, square hole, and he's holding on to the edges of it. The framing of that scene, oh my god, it brought me so much joy. It was so good.
Yeah.
Just like the true visceral horror of like being pulled down into like some abyss that a guaranteed monster is down there.
It's just such a cool tone shift from like, I'm a YouTuber in an abandoned building, and like, oh, this is creepy. Oh, I hear rustling. Maybe there's like, you know, a person living down in here. And then it's like, I am about to die.
A big hulking monster,
I'm really about to die. And so...
and then we see him get yanked down. Ugh, and that pushes... It's tied to a bed frame. That pushes the bed and causes Kat and Clark to also fumble down this hole. And... then we see, like, the camera fall, and we watch Bobby's body get dragged through a door, blood streaking. Like, oh my god, the framing was so good. And that's when just, like, the whole movie really picks up tone. Because Kat runs in one direction, Clark runs in the other direction. Clark picks up the camera, and then Clark is, like, running through these different rooms. You're hearing the shrieking of the monster. He runs into, like, a Christmas room. And then this... getting to see the still lifes up close for the first time, that brought me such intense joy. Because he comes up on this, like, man sitting in a chair, and the man turns on a light, and you see that there's something not exactly right with him, but I didn't expect the movement in that scene. I really was, like, didn't expect, like, a hand movement, and I didn't understand what was going on. I was so disoriented during that in the best way possible. And then you see another entity run up on him, like, super close, and chase him. Oh, it was so... just like that I was grinning. I was grinning the entire time, in the most horrified way possible. But it was just, like... That was the first time we'd ever seen an entity up close that much, and you can kind of see that the entity looks like a human but is distorted. And just that we get just the perfect amount of this is the most we've ever seen, and also I have no idea what I'm looking at. It was so good.
Right. Yeah, it's very much distorted in the way that like those Da Vinci paintings where it's like multiple faces like layered over each other kind of. It's very well done. That just looks incredibly weird. It's very fitting for the Backrooms, I think, the way that the entities looked.
And so then he's chased into like a pool rooms-esque. Kat can see him through the wall, but he can't see Kat. And then we see him trying to talk to Kat through the wall, and then an entity behind him pick up the camera, and then it cuts.
Yeah, it picks up the camera.
The picking up of the camera, it was so good.
Bro.
So good. That whole scene.
No, it was peak. And then it cuts, and you're like, maybe he just died.
Right, it cuts to Mary.
Yeah, so Mary, the therapist, we're back in her POV. She's, I think, reminiscing about her house again. Yeah. And then she's like, you know what? I haven't heard from Clark in a while, and that last session didn't seem too confidence-inspiring. What was it exactly that caused her to go to the store? Was there one thing?
I think she saw one of his commercials on TV. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
She sees the commercial and goes, yeah, I really haven't seen that guy in a while. Maybe I should go check up on him. Right.
So she goes to the store and, you know, makes her way through slowly. I mean, I guess she's worried that, you know, Clark might be hurt or something, and she's, like, just looking for him, basically. And so she's going down, she goes into the basement and finds this setup that Clark has with the big scrawling sketch of the map of the Backrooms, the furniture kind of strewn around where he had been living down there, and she's like, you know, holy crap. And she sees the blue taped outline where Clark has marked the, you know, the convergence doorway. What did you call it again?
Null zone.
A null zone.
Yeah.
Yes. So she sees all of this at once and is just like, oh my, you know, this guy's room thingy, he was really manifesting this in real life. That's not good. And then she sees what, a fly or something?
Fly.
A little fly fly into where that
through the null zone
is, and it just disappears, clips right through the wall.
Such a good
she's just like
scene. Which I actually found out that I was watching an interview with Kane, and he was saying that fly being there was like an accident, and then they added that in.
Mm-hmm.
But in the original iteration, there was like a scene with a fly that got cut, and then the thing with the fly happened, and he was like, okay, well, we got to make it happen. So that was not like, I guess, like a CGI fly. That was like a real fly.
Wow.
Yeah. Paid actor, the fly.
So she makes her way into the back rooms. She walks through the doorway, and now almost every character we've met is in there. So, alive or dead. And
something we haven't brought up, we keep also getting flashes randomly to like this scientist.
Oh yes, we do get flashes to a scientist who basically saw
Clark on a security camera.
Yes, he saw Clark on a security camera inside the back room. So you understand that it's implied he's with Async. Mm-hmm. So,
and then we cut to his family, and he sees the commercial
right.
with Clark.
He sees the commercial of for Clark's furniture store with the pirate, and he's like, "That's the same guy." Yep. And so he knows where to find him now, and so that sets a few things in motion as well. Does anything really happen between her entering and her seeing the mural? Because I don't really remember.
Not really. I mean, she's just kind of taking note of the space. You can tell that she's very uneasy. But yeah, then she gets to this really creepy mural. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I saw the mural in the shape of the entity, I was like, oh. Like, I think that this is about to happen. And they gave me just enough time between the reveal of the entity and when I first got the inkling of what the entity could be, that I forgot that was going to happen, and then when they did the reveal, I was flabbergasted. It was incredible.
Yeah, no, it was very good. So there's a mural of basically the pirate version of Clark eating
what people are calling Clark Life.
Clark Life,
yeah.
Eating the human version of Clark, and it's very reminiscent in style of the old 19th century painting, the Saturn devouring his son.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I think a lot of people drew connections to that.
I hadn't seen that, but that's yeah.
Yeah, so, very dramatic piece that she's, like, shocked by.
And something to note is that there's, like, writing all over the mural, and there's, like, a quote on it. I might be misquoting it, but it's a reference to like how time works in the back rooms, and I think it's something along the lines of like time's a two-way street here. And I just think that phrase is so fascinating because I feel like that could mean so many different things. And just that, like, right, we see Bobby and Kat's shoes before they're like stuck in the complex, built into the floors, before they ever die in the back rooms. So it's kind of like a chicken or an egg situation. Like, did their shoes get copied because they went into the back rooms? Or, like, because they were near a null zone, did it pick up on them? How did, like, just the nature of time within the back rooms is still so unclear and very fascinating.
Very much agreed. And so when she turns around to see something in the corner of the room, we're obviously a little worried for her well-being, but then it emerges that it is Clark.
And you're like, ooh, okay.
It's just Clark, right? But, he walks up to her and they begin talking. And at this point, I start having the thought, because, the time is a two-way street, is how long has he been in here? Because in the YouTube series, you have an instance of a person who goes into the back rooms and gets separated from his group with Async. And he enters an area where time passes distinctly differently. He's in there for several months.
Is the character's name.
Right. He's in there for several months he's in there for...
Originally, he's in there for about, 15, 20 minutes. But when he exits the back rooms, he's been gone for months.
Yes, that's what it is.
So, Then they put him under kind of like psychiatric watch for a while. He runs away from them, escapes back into the back rooms, is in the back rooms for an uncertain amount of time before he escapes again.
Yeah.
So that's to your question of how long can someone survive in the back rooms? How long has Clark been there losing his goddamn mind? Because he seems pretty comfy at this point. So Clark chokes out his therapist. Super normal thing to do. And then she wakes up in like a weird liminal dining room space, which I thought, again, this scene, people had a lot of problems with. I think this is probably the best scene, the most tense scene in the entire movie, because while you're getting reveals, you also still have no idea what's going on. So this, every scene, every frame in this scene looks like an absurdist painting to me. Like, this is the most intense surrealism that, like, happens in the movie, for me at least. And people who were like, the complaint online was like, it didn't make any sense. None of this movie makes sense. The point is that none of this makes sense, and we're trying to make sense of something that inherently can't be made sense of. Like, this entire premise is that we are descending into madness and trying to make sense of it. That's the whole point of the film. And I think this scene really captures that. And so, I love that, like, the back of the room is, like, pointy and goes into, like, a dark abyss, kind of, like, not hallway, but, like, it looks like a dark void that goes on forever.
You can't really
but it's
see
just,
it, yeah.
It's just the point corner of the room. And then it comes out into, like, a kitchen with, like, a circle door, like a crescent door shape. No, am I saying that right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying.
Looks like.
But it's a door frame behind it where Clark is sitting at the head of the table and Mary's sitting at the other end of the table. And then there are 3 still lifes around them. Now, the 3 still lifes, which is, like, all the, like, humanoid figures who are distorted. You have, like, the man sitting in the wheelchair who, like, has the light attached to him. You have another man sitting at the table with them, and he has, like, distorted eyes all over his face and, like, multiple noses. And then in the corner is what is presumably a still life copy of Clark's wife. And I think that is so interesting because it's like, so how interconnected are the still lifes to the person who enters the back rooms? Like, what are the odds that you are going to run into somebody you know? Is it being copied based off of what is in your brain? Like, this raises, because then people also didn't like that this revealed too much of, like, what the monsters are, but I have way more questions now that I've seen the monsters than before I did. Like, this is presumably Clark's wife. She has the same hair color. She's wearing a suit. We know that Clark's wife is studying to be a lawyer. And so Clark goes to begin to explain that, like, everything in the back rooms is copies. And the copies copy the copies until they're so distorted that nothing makes sense anymore. So my question about the still life in connection with the bacteria monsters is it, like, what comes first? Do they start out as, like, bacteria monsters that then do they grow into, like, the humans? Or do the still lifes get copied so many times that then they become unrecognizable monsters, like gargled creations? That's a big question I have. And, like, what does the first copy look like? Is the first copy a perfect copy? Is that even Clark? That's a question.
Is that a copy? Yeah.
Is that a very good copy of Clark?
Like the first one, yeah.
You know? There's so many questions here because reality is so distorted. And Clark then goes on to say the best part about these entities is that you can eat them. That really grossed me the hell out.
No almond water here.
No almond water.
We're eating the entities.
Gelatinous flesh. We're eating it. He takes one of the still lifes. He takes his shirt off and just stabs into his stomach. Opens also up the fridge to show that Cat's head is in there.
Oh yeah, that was disturbing.
Is that a copy of Cat's head? Is that actually Cat's head?
I don't think it was a copy, yeah.
Like, it's this whole scene, what is happening? And I don't think that there's a definitive answer that you can really apply to any of this at this point, but presuming that this is the original version of Clark, what also effect does being in the back rooms that long, how long has he been in the back rooms, what type of distortion does that do to your mind?
Largely, I would agree. I had the same thought at first, like I said, as to whether that was a Clark copy / entity, that we see. I mean, especially when he, honestly, just from the moment when he first attacked Mary, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the entity right there. But the fact that he continues to rehash the conversation going forward, he rehashed that roleplay conversation from earlier in the movie with his wife, where he's still caught on this same loop. Like, it's almost like a time loop that continues in his own mind. And so I think the leading into that as the focal point and kind of the climax of this conversation in the movie is a very, very interesting choice.
Right, because throughout the whole film, we hear Clark listening to Mary. Mary has, like, tapes that she sells of, like, basically recorded therapy sessions that she, like, sells en masse. And he's listening to them, and it's about, like, enter through the different doorways in your mind. Like, try to find that old place in your head. And so it's, like, that in combination with, like, him finding the back rooms where it's literally that. She's speaking metaphorically, and then to literally find that, Clark comes to the conclusion, like, he does this gross thing where he scalps the still life of his wife and puts the hair on Mary's head and, like, makes them repeat the argument. And Mary finally loses it on him, and she's like, you're the problem. And Clark has this moment of realizing no one's ever told him that somehow. Or, like, they have, but this is the first time he's ever really heard it. And he goes, yeah, I am, and this place is okay with that, and, like, I don't want to leave, and I don't want to change. She's like, well, then stay here. And basically, I think that's just a great metaphor for, like, there are people in your life who are the problem, who don't want to change, and will say that they're miserable, but they would be more miserable to change and go through the process of improvement rather than become something new. Like, they're so comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think it's just this great metaphor for mental illness of, like, people who don't want to work on their mental illness. You become, like, a more distorted version of yourself every time you make the choice not to choose to be a good person and choose to improve yourself and work on your mental health. Like, I think the Backrooms Kane is using it as such a good metaphor for, like, mental health distortion, where it's like, you can decide that you're the victim, and you can constantly say you're the victim and blame other people and point the finger, but if you never take accountability, you lose yourself progressively over and over and over again. And Clark comes to the conclusion that he's too far gone in his mental health journey that he can't come back from, that he would rather stay in a place that, like, basically rewards him for slipping into a darker, worse version of himself. Which then raises the question, is that why the entities they, like, energetically, do they feel okay around him? Because, like, he's on, like, the same almost, like, mental wavelength as them? Like, why they're not attacking him or Mary in that scene, I don't fully understand. But that's what I do think the metaphor about mental health is being said within the film. Of, like, if you don't take care of your mental health, and if you insist upon being a victim, then you will continue to distort into a version of yourself that you won't recognize. I thought that was brilliantly done there. And that's part of, like, that scene is doing so many things on so many levels. Of, like, that's part of the message of the scene, but also the absurdism and the horror is very real there. And I love when Mary finally loses it on him. And someone finally literally tells him to shut the fuck up. Yeah. Like, yes. And that's when we go into the next big reveal of Clark life.
We go into
we hear the old peg leg dragging.
We hear a sound, a little ka-chunk, little dragging noise, and Clark is agreeing. He's like, all right, I'll untie you. I'll let you go. Okay, whatever. But I'm gonna stay down here forever. And then
the still life wife goes crazy. But before that, the still life wife goes crazy.
What does she do?
She runs into the corner and keeps running into the corner, which implies she has some fear of Clark life. Which is that, okay, so then, as people are copied into the back rooms, are there fears in the still lives? They have some mental capacity, but what is it? Because the wife is scared of Clark life. It could be because he's a giant hulking monster, but what resemblance does that have to the real people? I don't know yet, but those parallels are interesting.
Yeah, certainly. It could be that it's a reflection of the real people, but
I wouldn't say this is a theory video. This is like a speculation video.
this is top tier theory. So you see a tall hulking figure start to walk into the door frame, and it bends down and kind of enters the room and stands above Clark
at like
and
9
Mary
feet
at
tall.
like 9 feet tall. It is a distorted pirate version of Clark.
Yeah.
As the kind of the huge monster is
clearly
him.
the thing that got Bobby, because when you see the shadow, you see like that pirate hat shape.
The shape, yeah.
And it just looks like a big triangle in kind of like the dark. But then it becomes very obvious that like that's what took Bobby, and that is like obviously the main big bad in this section of the Backrooms. Horrifying. Clark walks up to it and he's like, "It's okay, buddy." Like, oh, like he has like some relationship with it.
Yeah.
Like I don't like
he kind of fears it, but he also like he believes he's able to calm it down.
Yeah. And that really doesn't work for him because it takes a huge bite out of his shoulder and then dismembers him in front of Mary.
Yeah, very unfortunate then for Mr. Clark.
Buddy Clark.
So Mary...
He was a man.
He was a guy.
He was a guy.
In a room.
In a room. In the back of a room.
So Mary, possibly the actual protagonist of this movie, is now alone. Well, not alone. She's in this room with the creature. And she's like kind of partly untied. She finishes getting herself unsecured from the chair. And...
the best chase scene maybe in movie history ever.
And she just rambles out of the room while the monster is dismembering Clark.
Right.
And starts just booking it through the back rooms. And I mean, it is intense. Like, this is a very, very well done chase scene. Like, I think my favorite part, and I think this also made the cut into the trailer, but like for good reason, is when she's going through this section that's just so narrow that like her body can barely fit through it, but she's trying to move as fast as she can, and it's just like this just absurd distress at like this. It's like this immense fear at a situation that makes no sense at all.
Right.
And yeah,
but the first thing she runs through is like a town that's not a town.
I love that one because that was definitely referential to the YouTube series as well.
Right. Very well shot. And I interestingly just learned that was actually shot in a real town.
Really?
Yeah. And
where?
they Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah, all this was filmed in Canada. And so then, but they took these giant like balloon lights and lit the whole town to give it that uniform lighting
that's weird.
over the town. And they shot it in the middle of the night, but the whole thing, and then they edited it in the walls. So she runs through there, kind of closes the door behind Clark Life, and then we get to see this bottomless pit that and just like a staircase leading up to a single door that is the only way out of there.
Yeah.
And like you see through the pit, then there's other levels in the back rooms, like hundreds of them. So good. So absurd.
Yep. There's a couple of scenes in the YouTube series found footage that show a similar thing where someone kind of gets to this area between rooms where they can look up and down and around and they see like, oh crap, there's millions of these rooms. I can see them.
And what's crazy is that implies like the entire complex is connected. There is like, seemingly, if you could not get eaten by an entity, could get from one point to another. And it's just like, the question of the nature of the Backrooms for me, and my theory, is that somehow this is supposed to represent infinity. And I think it has to have some level of connection to the human psyche for these rooms to be being built. The question is because Ivan Beck was the first person to open the Backrooms, did it connect to his brain and start from there, and then as it connected to other human brains, it copies things from there? Or is it just inherently a parallel pocket reality that is also infinite, that is bordering our reality, and so it just picks up on things through our reality? Like, it's very clearly like some type of pocket parallel reality that is parallel, like real snug right up next to ours. And it has to be presumably like, if it's not, it's infinite in the sense of it's always expanding, you know? Like, and I think Mary looking into this pit is a really great example of that,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the same questions we have surrounding, well, how is space infinitely expanding? What rhyme and reason is there to it? But the Backrooms, it's so strange because it's so human. Like, space makes more sense. It's nonsensical that space is fucking infinite and it's void. But what's really crazy to me with the Backrooms is that makes less sense because it's so human-made. Like, you think that they would take human hands and time to build and process these things, but we don't see that. It just spawns in. And that's part of what's so eerie about it, because if you were to be stuck in there and not have a null zone, you really could go on forever and ever.
Right. The original that original post on 4chan said 300 million square miles.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think that's like multiple times the Earth.
Yeah.
So that's like an insanely, just ridiculously high number that they made up, I'm sure. But, you know.
So then, anyways, Mary looks into the void, has to crawl up a staircase over the void. Something like she opens the door. I think the door falls into the void, and you just see it go like forever. Terrifying.
You don't hear a sound or anything.
No sound. She climbs her through the hole. Clark Life's chasing her, and then she comes out into like almost a perfect parallel replica of the store.
Mm-hmm.
So good, because she's like, "Did I escape? No. You're still in the Backrooms, but it's a perfect replica."
She sees the distorted furniture like sinking into the floor, and she realizes, firmly that's still the Backrooms.
So runs up into the store, sees another caveman playing the sound on loop as Clark Life is still chasing her, and then she makes the choice to fight it, which I thought was so good. We've never got to see anyone fight an entity in the Backrooms. She fights it pretty successfully, beats the heck out of it, like knocks its leg,
knocks it down,
uses the piece of concrete she's had in her pocket this whole time.
Oh yeah, the handprint concrete is now a weapon.
Yeah, uses it. What's interesting, we see with the other still lifes that they're just this like gelatinous flesh, but when she beats Clark Life to death, he has blood.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it does establish that he's different than the others.
Right.
Fundamentally.
Right. So then what is the difference between the classification of entities? And like, were those other entities not harming them? Because yes, the copy of his wife chased him.
Yeah. But we don't know if it was going to harm him,
though. Was it going to harm him? How would she would only be able to harm in the same sense of like a human woman would be able really to harm you. She's pretty much only built like a human woman. So it's like, are entities only as terrifying as the grotesque copies of them can be, and like the distortion ones? Like the more distorted, they have the capacity for harm. But so there's so many questions about how we're going to start classifying the still life entities now. So Mary beats the heck out of it, and then like gets to that scene that you were talking about through that very narrow wall, finally runs into Async. Async takes her in, has her speak with the scientists we've been seeing this whole time. We see that they have the entity in like a separate room. They're starting to do studies on it, and they start to question Mary, and this is pretty much near the end of the film. Like Mary asks, like, what are you guys going to do with me? The scientist says it's not up to him. Something that Kane always wants to point out is that Async isn't like inherently like a mwahaha evil group. He thinks of them as like scientists trying to explore space. And so this then for Mary, you kind of see her just in a moment of silent like self-reflection, see as the scientist explains to her that the Backrooms kind of, and what her understanding of what Clark says in combination of those things, that the Backrooms copies everything, presumably. There's presumably a copy of everything, is I think the implication.
Yeah. That
her home is still out there somewhere, even though it's been destroyed.
Right.
And it looks like that's enough for her to like let everything go. Whereas her and Clark take the Backrooms existence in the opposite way. She takes it as a freeing thing, and like, I can let it all go because it exists somewhere. And that's enough. Whereas Clark needs to hold on to it and be a part of it. And I think that is the point of the film about just like when we hold on to these urban spaces and the liminality and the unnaturalness of them, like we can either hold on to this urban decay that's happening all around us and destroy ourselves by embracing this urbanism that makes no sense, or we can let it go and say, it existed for a time, and in my heart it's still out there somewhere, but I'm ready to like let it go. I think that's the big question that Kane kind of frames of like, are we going to hold on to the past or are we going to let it go? As like, the takeaway message for the audience. That's what I took away from it, at least. And then, of course, there's just, like, the actual still lore of, like, we have had a lot of questions answered, but I think it's opened so many new ones. And that's realistically what happens when you are doing a scientific project, when you're learning about space or the ocean. Every time you answer a question, you unlock 20 more, and I think that makes this series infinitely interesting, because it is just so absurd. And at the very end of the film, then we cut to a still life of Mary sitting somewhere.
Well, it's a distortion of her childhood living room. Remember?
No,
it cuts to her old house, and then it goes down a level, it's distorted. It goes down a level, it's, maybe the older version of it. And it goes down, it's an empty room, and the furniture is messed up, and etc. It goes down like 10 levels, and then in the final one, it's just her sitting there.
Her sitting there, but it's almost like her in that moment when she's in the interview.
Right, but I think to me that was implying that, like, she's physically in the interview, but a part of her is still in that room.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. And almost like the infinite struggles we have within ourselves to reconcile with, like, who we used to be. It's like, yes, there is a part of us always there, but it is up to you to let it go and move on from it. Like, yes, there is a part of you that's always going to be there. That's just something you're going to have to live with and learn to cope with. And you either can try to go back to that place that you can never get back to, and even if you got back to that place, it'd be a distortion of what it once was if you got back to that place. Even, like, with the people that used to be there. And we've all lost someone. We've all lost a home, or even if, like, you go back to your childhood home. My family still owns my childhood home, but I walk back through that house, and it's not the house that I grew up in. I haven't lived there in, like, 6 years. And it's definitely not what it was when I was a small child. And it's like, we can always try to get back to those places, but the harder we hold on to those places, the more it harms us. And if you can just accept that, yes, there's always a part of you that will be there and in your memory exists there, and let it be, you can move on and, like, create new spaces that can, like, fill the void of that. I think that's the big takeaway from the movie.
So that mainly wraps up the synopsis of the movie and our reflections on it. What do you hope for in the sequel? They already announced the deal for it. Oh,
they did? I didn't know that. That's so exciting. I have a feeling Mary probably is going to start working for Async. I think it's probably going in that direction. There was some leaked version of the script early on where the movie ended with, like, her, like, putting on a suit and going into the back rooms. This cat is about to jump through the frame, and that's all right. I have a feeling it'll be about Mary exploring the back rooms. I have a feeling... I mean, I kind of knew what to expect with this film. I kind of thematically understood, but the actual happenings of the film, I couldn't really fully predict. So I don't try to be too predictive with it, because I do want to enjoy the surprise of however Kane's beautifully fucked up brain works.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, to get more of the scientific explanations from it. I would like to spend more time with the science stuff. I know some people didn't like that, and they were like, it felt like Stranger Things. But I thought, this was infinitely better than the last season of Stranger Things. You don't conflate the two.
No, I heard a rumor that there was an original script, and maybe this is more than a rumor, but that there was an original draft of the script that Kane had worked on that was from the perspective of an async employee, and he just found that it wasn't as scary or engaging when the person is assumed to have some knowledge of the back rooms, that, like, it's just more immersive and scary when it's someone falling in that has no idea what's going on.
So I think we have to have some more scientific, I think in the next one, explanation of things to at least distinguish it from this film. Because I feel like, Kane will do his thing and it'll be great. I'm very much looking forward to it. But for me personally, I want more scientific explanations behind everything that's happening. And for me, I've said this throughout the video, that I just don't think that ruins anything, because it's going to open the door to 20 more questions every time. Mm-hmm. Because inherently none of this makes sense. So it never will make sense. So you're just going to have to keep justifying everything that's happening. And you can do that forever and ever. Smelly Catto.
Oh, there's a cat frame.
He has his
Bro.
On the back rooms.
Okay, well,
we got the cat train.
Did you have any final comments? I mean, you kind of made good reflections. If not, that's fine. We can just...
Yeah, I would give the movie, like, a solid, like, 9 out of 10. Yeah, so the only thing I would have added is I could have used about 20 more minutes of Clark exploring the back rooms, mapping it out, maybe just finding weird details, like creepy things, and just trying to like have him make sense of it. Maybe have him have a journal and be like, maybe this means this, maybe that means that.
Right, just someone who gets to look at it closely and get their POV on the little details.
I could have even used a funny scene of him trying to resell some of the furniture in the back rooms that, like, to break up the exploration, like, do like a little, like a montage of him being like studying, taking the furniture out, trying to sell the furniture.
Yeah.
Study. Like, I could have used 20 more minutes of back rooms exploration. But
that would have been cool.
But that's just me. Someone inevitably then, if that would have been in the film, would have bitched and moaned and been like, we get it. We don't need 20 more minutes of that.
So yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more.
Do it, or you're going to end up in the back rooms.
And I'll put up a photo of the hallway of the building that we met in, because it looks like the back rooms.
Oh my gosh, yeah. When we first started dating, we met in the back rooms, actually. Yeah. That's where we met.
I'll put it up for the clothing.
Our dorm was a hotel from like the late or early 1900s.
It was built in the 1920s and had just been renovated in the 70s, basically, and then just painted over and over and over. And with
the most disgusting color palette truly the ugliest color palette I've ever seen in my whole life.
And every floor had a hallway that was as long as a New York City block, so it went incredibly far of these like repeating door frames, and every floor was also painted a different color. So it was just so weird. Liminal space #1.
Yeah, if you were walking through that building late at night, like I used to do my laundry in the middle of the night, so
the laundry room's worse. Yeah,
laundry room was awful. And I would do my laundry in the middle of the night so that it wasn't busy down there, and I just had a busy schedule, so that was kind of when I could do my laundry. And walking through that place alone, terrifying.
It was. There's
we really found
entities
love
in
a hopeless place. Yeah, there was entities. Yeah.
All right. We'll cut it there.